Live from the SABC's Auckland Park headquarters, welcome to this midweek edition of the Watchdog. My name is Mpho, and here's what we have in store for you tonight. Buoyed by yesterday's victory for her Ekurhuleni colleague, under siege Johannesburg Mayor Mpho Phalatse says, bring it on, as the ANC threatens to remove her in just over a week. What gives her the confidence? What's her party's plan? She's my first guest. We then move on to the ANC on a day it raised eyebrows after hinting at the possibility of getting the media to pay for covering its elective conference next month. And on the same day, people are discussing who the ANC Women's League prefers to lead the governing party after its December conference. The latest opinion poll, though, is very unflattering of the country's political parties, especially the biggest and leading two, namely the ANC and the DA. Political think tank Rivonia Circle head Songezo Zibi talks us through the findings of their latest commissioned body of work.
We opened what we call an own accord investigation into this matter, but we have received, like you've mentioned, a complaint from civil society, and which we have registered and consolidated into our main investigation.
And frustrated families turn to the Human Rights Commission as they find no joy from the political and legal systems. We hear from the organization that's helping the families find both justice and closure. All that's coming up in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts now. Knives are out for City of Johannesburg Mayor Mpho Phalatse. The ANC wants her out by all means necessary. She's adamant, though, that she's going nowhere. She joins us on the line. Good evening, Mayor. Thanks very much for your time.
A very good evening to you, and thanks for having me.
Not an ideal line, which is why we had to delay a bit, but we'll have to make do with this telephone line. Well, do you have a plan?
Well, my plan is to keep focusing on our residents. We started today with our regional visits. We've been fighting this political fight for far too long, and unfortunately our residents are suffering. We can't have it any longer. We are now focusing on them. We started today with our regional visits, the Golden Connection tours. We're going into the regions, picking up what needs to be done. I'm taking the MNCs what's needed so they can pick up all issues and hopefully start addressing those.
Well. I mean, the ANC is going to stop at nothing. I mean, from the promises that they have made, they're pulling all stops to try and make sure that you are out. The minute, of course, they are able to file a motion of or notice of a motion of no confidence that actually complies with the rules. Have you engaged your partners to make sure that you are able to stop them?
All partners are on board. That is, of course, with the exception of the Patriotic Alliance, who we all know decided to cross floors and be part of the ANC coalition of corruption. The rest of our partners are fully on board. The mayoral committee is fully behind me. We're back in our portfolios. I've got 9 out of 10 MNCs. That's, of course, with the exception of the Patriotic Alliance MNC, who held the Health and Social Development portfolio in our coalition. I've got my MNC Harris from Community Development, the ACDP MNC, taking care of that portfolio until further notice. We are working and focusing on our residents. Our focus is service delivery, of course. We are a minority government now, which means we don't have 50% plus one. If there is a motion of no confidence in the council meeting of the 23rd of this month, we will go in as a minority government and see what happens.
But in numbers terms, I mean, what are the chances they could just scupper your plans?
Well, I mean, like I said, we are a minority government. That means we do not have 50% plus one. If you recall, when I was elected, I only had 26%, and I still went into that election, and I came out the executive mayor of the city of Johannesburg. We'll go in with our numbers as they stand. We are about 130 out of 270, so we are about 6 seats short of the 150 of the 50% plus one. But we will go in with 130 seats, and we'll see what happens.
Of course, I mean, your colleague at Ekurhuleni yesterday was helped in no small measure by the EFF. In fact, I want to say the fact that the EFF and the ANC couldn't find one another. Now, in the event you find yourselves in a situation where you are able to go through this time around, how confident are you that you won't be able to stop them, months down the line when they may just be able to do what they would not have been able to do next week?
Well, it's politics. It's a numbers game, like you say. When I was elected mayor, I had 26%. I was voted in. I became the mayor with just 26% of the vote. We started negotiating after the fact, and we started forming a coalition only after my election as mayor. You'll recall that I was elected on the 22nd of November. The mayoral committee was only announced on the 13th of December, more than 2 weeks later. And that's unfortunately where we find ourselves. The municipality was hung. Nobody got an outright majority. The electorate has put us in this position, and we have to work with what we have.
Well, I'm raising this because, for a number of reasons. One being, or the first being, the very reason you put up front, the issue of stability. I mean, the people of the city of Johannesburg are looking for stability, and this spectacle that has been playing itself over and over again is the last thing that they need. But I'm raising this question also because your own partners and allies have previously raised issues with the way you have managed the coalition. And it's the same question I put to Tanya Campbell yesterday. In other words, do you feel that you are in a much better position going into this time around than perhaps was the case before?
I'm not aware of any complaints regarding my leadership as the mayor of Johannesburg. I am aware that at a national level there have been some tensions or differences between different political parties, but at the local level, I'm quite confident that we've been working well and we will continue working well. Working well does not mean that we never disagree. It doesn't mean that there's never any conflict. Where there is conflict, we resolve it in the most amicable manner, bearing in mind that our residents must be front and center. We're all here to serve them, and we need to put their interests first. So we will continue in the same fashion. If there's any issues to be ironed out, they will continue to be ironed out internally. We'll make sure that our residents are insulated as much as possible from the impact of political differences.
Well, I mean, you're correct in one respect, and that is that there have not been complaints against you. The complaints have been leveled at your party leadership, in particular your federal executive, and how it has managed these things up until now. And really what I'm trying to understand is whether there have been conversations within your party, among yourselves, with your leadership, as to how you are going to manage these relationships going forward, because that's what has put a spanner in the works in the past, and it's not about you personally. In fact, if anything, there have people. I mean, your partners have spoken well, about you. They think they even understand the predicament that you've often found yourself in. So you are right. The complaint has not been against you, but against the leadership of your party.
Well, relationships within the coalition are managed in line with the coalition agreement. It's quite clear on parameters and the governance framework that we all ought to align ourselves with. I don't think that there's been any deviation. I do think that there were expectations that there should be deviation, and that's primarily the bone of contention, where the Democratic Alliance felt that we need to abide by the terms of the coalition agreement until such time as the agreement has been reviewed. And that's been the position of the Democratic Alliance, and it continues to be the position of the Democratic Alliance. At whatever point the partners feel that the coalition agreement should be reviewed, that review will happen, and then we will align accordingly. So I don't think that the Democratic Alliance ought to change or deviate away from an agreement that was signed by 9 political parties. We know that PA is no longer there. The 8 parties, the other parties are there, except, of course, the ATM and COPE, following what happened with the ousting of the Speaker. But the rest of the parties are still fully a part of the coalition, and we are governed by the same coalition agreement. We've not signed a new agreement, and we will continue as a Democratic Alliance to align ourselves with the terms of that agreement.
Your colleague, the mayor of Ekurhuleni, said yesterday that she is going to endeavor to speak to parties like the EFF, which, of course, I mean, your party has made no secret of the fact that it's not so keen to work with the EFF because, I mean, ideologically and otherwise, you are diametrically opposed. I'd be keen to know where you stand on that possibility.
As executive mayors, we are mayors of the entire city, and we are bound by the Constitution and the various other laws of the country to work with all political parties in council. It does not mean that we will be in a formal coalition agreement with all the parties, but we do have an obligation to engage all parties because they represent key constituents in the city, and there has to be representation. If you look at how we approached the budgeting in the last financial year, as an example, before our budget kicked in on the 1st of July, we extended an invite to all political parties. We made time to engage all of them and to hear from them what they would like to see reflected in the budget, and that's the spirit with which we will continue to govern, and I believe that's what Mayor Tanya was alluding to.
Mm-hmm. And the ANC, how do you see your relationship going forward? Let's just say you do indeed stay on even after the motion of no confidence. Do you see a working relationship, for lack of a better description? Or perhaps before you answer that question, maybe I should play this clip, and maybe you will then and then hear what your view is about sort of finding some kind of a working relationship with them. But take a listen to what the provincial chairperson of the ANC, Panyaza Lesufi, had to say here on the program a couple of weeks ago.
We assessed our performance and we felt we can go and negotiate with other political parties, and we did that. We got Joburg back, and we're on the verge of finalizing Ekurhuleni, and then we'll then be in a position to follow up in Mogale City and Tshwane. And I think on the basis of that, we'll be ready now to service our people in a manner that assists them.
Well, of course, I mean, as everyone knows, I mean, Johannesburg, there was the court ruling, which you're now reeling from, which put a spanner in the works.
It's a temporary inconvenience, to be quite frank. The parties that support us in Johannesburg, all of them voted with us in Ekurhuleni, so we are confident. We are quite aware that that programming committee that the court found that it didn't do its work properly, it was basically sabotage.
Do you think you can still forge some kind of a working relationship with the mayor? Not necessarily as coalition partners, obviously, but a relationship that will ensure that the people of the city do not suffer in the process.
Well, as I've indicated, when we worked on our budget for the current financial year, we reached out to all political parties, including the African National Congress. They hold 91 seats in our council of 270 seats. We've never sought to exclude them in any way, shape, or form, and that is going to be our attitude going forward. We continue to reach out where service delivery is concerned. I continue to work with all councillors. Today I was in Region G doing my regional tour, you'll note that Region G is a majority ANC region. I engaged with ANC councillors today on their issues, and their issues will be taken forward by the various MNCs. So when you're in government, you don't govern for your political party. You govern for all 6 million residents and all their representatives, regardless what political parties they belong to, and that is what the law requires, and that's how we will proceed.
Okay, Mayor, let me thank you for your time. Thank you very much, and best of luck.
Thank you so much, Leon.
Of course, he's the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, Mpho Phalatse. In about a week's time, that's if the ANC can file a motion of no confidence that complies with the rules, because they did file one, which was found to not have been compliant. If they do, they too are confident that they can oust her. But of course, she, as you heard there, is also confident that she is going nowhere. She reckons that they've done the necessary work to convince their partners to do the right things, and come whatever day will be set aside for that meeting or council sitting where that motion will be tabled, she will emerge the victor. We'll see what pans out of that. Of course, there's also a context to this. You know by now that in Ekurhuleni, the mayor there returned yesterday, thanks in a small measure to what the EFF had to do following the breakdown of those conversations between the ANC and the EFF. We'll see what happens in Johannesburg. We're going to take a quick ad break. After the break, we're talking matters ANC, and after that, we'll bring you the latest poll that has indicated that both the DA and the ANC aren't doing particularly well among voters at the moment. They may, in fact, score well below their current numbers. We're going to bring you that conversation with the leader of the think tank that actually commissioned that particular survey. All that's coming up in a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's talk matters ANC now. Some South Africans have mixed feelings about the forthcoming ANC National Conference. It's just over a month. In just over a month, I should say, the governing party will hold its 55th National Congress to refine its policies, but also elect new leaders. While some people on the streets believe leaders elected and policies adopted will inevitably affect their lives, others say they're just concerned about their own well-being and simply don't care who gets elected.
The African National Congress will be heading to its 55th National Conference this December. From 1912, the ANC has had 13 presidents. Now at 110 years old, the ANC is one of the oldest liberation movements in the African continent. During the years as it prepared for such a conference, many would be waiting with bated breath to hear who would emerge victorious to take the party forward. And in as much as delegates to the conference will take stock of what happened in the past 5 years, they will also elect new leadership. The ANC has been at the helm of governance since the dawn of democracy. But due to internal squabbles, this has affected the party negatively, and that was evident in the recent elections. And their conference will be keenly watched by some South Africans, both black and white. In recent years, there's been debates on what the party has achieved in the last 28 years.
I'm quite interested. I mean, politics drives the narrative of the country, so our leaders needs to, drive that. And I mean, it's an elective conference. Everybody's interested in that, who's going to lead the ANC in the next 5 years or so.
Yes, I am interested in politics. I'll tell you why. I think we really need to have a fair and honest government in our country. We all need to work together as one, and our politics needs to be handled in a godly way.
But these South Africans say there will be no difference at all, insisting that The ANC government's promises of a better life for all, made almost 3 decades ago, are yet to be fulfilled.
I'm not interested. I don't see any reason why I should be interested in the politics. First of all, we don't have jobs, we're not working.
They all preach the same thing. They just like empty promises. Then what do we get at the end of it? Nothing. Just like lies that we expected.
I'm not interested. However, I would like to see the review on what their plans are.
I'm not interested because we've been promised a lot. Actions can actually speak louder than it. We're tired of them telling us this and that and that.
Political analyst Rebonetao believes that this will be a breaking point for the party.
The stakes are very high at this conference. I've been saying to a lot of people, you know, Polokwane was a walk in the park. And Polokwane was a walk in the park. We could get sense. What we're going to see in December is going to be shocking.
Tau further says, political intolerance is now showing its head within the party.
There is lack of political tolerance in the ANC. You listen to some of the candidates who are running for president, how they are lambasting even the sitting president in public. This is something that it is not was never common in the ANC, where you lambast a sitting president as you are campaigning. You know.
Meanwhile, at least 15 people, including the current president Cyril Ramaphosa and his deputy David Mabuza, have thrown their heads in the ring for the positions of president and deputy president. Nhlanhla Khatlani, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, let's pick up from where Nhlanhla ended. The people who have thrown their hats in the ring, and of course ANC branches and ANC structures have been voting on their preferred candidates, and the most recent, of course, being the ANC Women's League. The ANC Women's League task team, you'll recall that they do not have a proper Women's League leadership at the moment. They have a task team that has been tasked with running the affairs of the league. A couple of days ago, they took decisions on who they are going to back for the top 6 positions of the organization come the December conference. And for president, they want the incumbent to stay on. But for deputy president, they want Thandi Modise, who is currently the minister of Defense, but also an ANC Women's League veteran and a stalwart. He's been with the league for many, many years. Gwede Mandasha for national chair, the ANC Women's League task team says they want Fikile Mbalula for Secretary General. And for Deputy Secretary General position, they want Phoebe Potgieter. And they want Gwen Ramokgopa for the position of Treasurer General. That's where the ANC Women's League task team stands. I'm wondering if we can compare or contrast this particular preferred list with that of the Youth League task team, which pronounced a couple of days ago. They want as Dr. Zweli Mkhize, who is the challenger to incumbent Cyril Ramaphosa. They want Paul Mashatile for deputy president, Stanley Mathabata for national chair, Fikile Mbalula, now common in both slates, if I may call them that, of the Women's League and the Youth League. They want Nomvula Mokonyane for Deputy Secretary, and they want Bule Mabe for Treasurer General. An interesting thing to observe, perhaps, is that where the Women's League has made attempts, it would appear, to include one of their own as the deputy president, as in Thandi Modise, but also they've tried to ensure that there's 3 women on their list in line, I would imagine, with their own mandates and beliefs, whereas in the Youth League, list, you don't see young people really. I mean, Fikile Mbalula, yes, was once the president of the ANC Youth League, but he's much older now, and is not a young person anymore. And from this ANC Youth League list, there's only one woman. Of course, we're going to see how this pans out, because you'll recall also that these leagues actually have fewer numbers. In other words, they allowed 40 delegates each, whereas the branches of the ANC are going to get there in their thousands. Now, that's where the latest structures of the ANC are, namely the Women's League and the Youth League. And from what the men and women running the ANC full-time currently are saying, it's all systems go. They made a trip to Nasrec, where the conference is going to be held today, where they made an assessment of the facilities there, how things are. Paul Mashatile, the Treasurer General of the ANC, and the man who is also running the Secretariat of the ANC, saying he's got something to report on when the National Executive of the ANC meets this weekend, and that is that things are getting there. Things are, they will be ready indeed to hold the conference come December. Take a listen to what the leadership of the ANC that visited Nasrec today had to say.
We will then have the election of the top 6 on that first evening. Hopingly it will happen before midnight, but because of delays, it might go well into the night.
Of course, there was another issue today that the ANC was embroiled in, and that's after it hinted that it may have to charge journalists, broadcast media in particular, for covering its conference. But of course, the spokesperson of the ANC keeps on insisting that they have been misunderstood. They were just highlighting some challenges that the organization has to be in being able to accommodate everyone at the venue, as everything has to be paid for. He was on our sister program a little earlier on, trying to clarify what they actually meant when they hinted at the fact that they may have to ask broadcasters in particular to pay for extra space that they may have to be allocated in the event they want something more than what the ANC is able to allocate them come the December elective conference. Here's Bulemabe.
You are saying that it wouldn't be a bad idea. It
wouldn't be a bad idea when done properly. Because, for instance, let's talk about a soccer match. To go to a soccer match, some of you, SABC, other media outlets, you have got you have got your own boxes there. I don't know what is the right way. I don't go a lot to stadiums, but you have got those suits. You have got suits at stadiums, and you pay for those things. They sit at F&B. You use those things for your own client liaison and all of that. You come to an ANC conference. At an ANC conference, we give you the space to put in your infrastructure to cover because you need to put in temporary studios and all of that. But you say, Pule, the space that you've provided me is not sufficient. I need extra. I say, but Bongiwe, if I'm only providing you with extra, how am I going to provide Theta FM, who might not have the resources you have to pull additional space? Now, remember this. Since 1994 to date, the number of media outlets we have in the country that have got interest in the ANC, rightfully so because we're the governing party, has itself grown exponentially. So we have got to make sure that we provide for everyone. So now, the notion, if the ANC was going out to sell media spaces, by the time we met journalists today, we'll be sitting with a rate card.
So
you can ask your colleagues today, just all of your colleagues, including the ones that tried to castigate us, because the intention here really is to always project an ANC in a negative light.
ANC spokesperson Pulumabe trying to clarify that issue that has, of course, raised eyebrows today. We'll see what comes out of that. As he promised, they will be engaging broadcasters to hear their views, our views, I should say, on this matter. Now, a new survey commissioned by think tank Rivonia Circle has indicated that if an election were to be held today, the ANC's share of the vote would drop below 40% from the 57.5% it obtained in 2019 national elections, while the DA would continue to drop to 18% and the EFF would increase to 15%. I am joined by the man who leads the Rivonia Circle, who is going to perhaps take us through, Songezo, how you conducted this survey, how many people were involved, and what really the point of it was.
Thanks. Good evening, Vuyo, and thanks for having me. So this survey was conducted about 3 months ago, in July and August, and the sample size was 2,000 people, representatives in every way that you can do in South Africa: race, age, province, gender, etc. And it wasn't just the survey that we did. It also wasn't the first. We also presented other insights from focus groups. So we had qualitative results as well as quantitative results. In the case of the survey, the sample size was 2,000. And the ANC dropping below 40% was on the basis of a stimulus, because one of the things we tried to stimulate in the survey and the focus groups was to describe the kind of alternatives that people in the qualitative part of our work have told us would be the kind of political alternative they want. So we formulated it into a question and asked them, if this was available to you, who would you vote for? In that instance, where you leave everything as it is, the ANC gets 41%. But if you stimulate it and say you get the kind of alternative you want, would you vote for it? The ANC dips far below 40%.
Now, I mean, I'm sure you would have seen some of the comments that people have made that this may well be a self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak, in that you and some within your organization have actually raised your hands as people who are willing, ready, and able to come forward and assist in the quagmire that the country the leadership vacuum, in so many respects that that we are finding in the country. What do you say to that? Because as someone said, you can't have your cake and try to eat it.
So unfortunately, we didn't do this ourselves. So we actually commissioned it and worked in partnership with Ipsos Machina. And so a lot of the methodology and infrastructure that we used for this survey was together with them, because they really experienced at the start.
Yes, they've been doing this for
in
many
essence,
years.
Vuyo, what we did, Vuyo, is that this was a second round of survey. The one we did in November last year, which was after the local government elections, people explained why they didn't turn up to vote, among others. For instance, they explained what would make them turn up to vote. So we used those insights, and from the qualitative work that we've done, where people describe what would make them get back to the ballot, we formulated that into a question. And so we asked your traditional question that survey companies ask: if an election was held today, who would you vote for? And they say. And then we infuse an additional question, which is premised on the earlier scientific work, and said, if there was something that looks like this, who would you vote for? And in that instance, it dropped. The most important insight, Vuyo, out of this is not actually just about the ANC. It is about all political parties, because what you see in that survey is that although 28 million people are not voting for the ANC, they're also not voting for the other parties either. And so the big insight is about the kind of politics that would attract people back to the ballot.
Talking about the big three very quickly, why is the ANC and the DA on the one hand seeing, the numbers going down, whereas an EFF goes up, yes, not by a big margin, but it keeps going up?
This is the best way of describing the problem for opposition parties. They're not able to get voters to switch from the ANC to them. That's the long and the short of it, right? What we found is that the ANC message at its core, or as people understood it, is still resonant. The non-racialism, deepening democracy and so on. It's just that they don't trust it anymore to do that because of the experience people have had over the last 30 years of its incumbency. The problem is the style of politics that is presented to them, such as the branch system, the party membership system, making extensive promises to voters, relying on big personalities to persuade voters. All of that is too similar to what the ANC is offering. And therefore, people don't vote for them either. And by the way, the EFF does the same thing, which is why it has basically plateaued. And in terms of this survey, it will continue to plateau. The style of politics and the political proposition must change in order to achieve that big shift.
A quick one. Any indications from the survey, Songes, as to whether the upcoming elective conference of the ANC in December may change the way people see and think of it at the moment?
We didn't ask that question specifically, Vuyo, but what we know, when you consider that 28 million South Africans have not voted in the last local government elections, firstly. Secondly, the ANC for the first time got less than 50% of the vote nationally in the local government elections. And thirdly, of all the major political parties, the ANC had the lowest turnout in its own stronghold areas across the board. So people have switched out of the ANC. They just have not re-engaged elsewhere. That is the insight that we can share.
Songes, thank you so much for your time this evening. Of course, from the Rivonia Circle, who, as you heard, have done this survey in partnership with Ipsos, which have been doing these surveys for many, many years. To this now, a complaint about the Enyobeni tragedy has been registered with the Human Rights Commission. The Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance in South Africa put in the complaint. The organization is going to join us in a moment, together, of course, with the Human Rights Commission. Don't go away. A complaint about the Enyobeni tragedy has been registered with the Human Rights Commission. The Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance in South Africa put in the complaint. The organization is of the view that the government spheres and agencies have failed to protect the entire citizenry from the harmful usage of alcohol. They further argue that the rights of the 21 deceased young people were violated when they were allowed into the establishment. I am joined by Maurice Smithers from the organization. I'm also joined by Dr. Aileen Carter from the Human Rights Commission, who have received the complaint. Maurice, in a nutshell, how did you get to this point? In other words, at what point were you did you then decide, look, we've got to do this because all these government agencies and politicians have failed?
Thank you, Vuyo. Well, actually, the fact is that we lodged this complaint on the 30th of June, 4 days after Enyobeni happened. And the reason why we did that was because in that first 4 days, the blame was being put at the door of the people running the tavern. It was even being put at the door of the parents and being put at the door of the children. And as far as we were concerned, one needs to actually look much deeper into how did we get into that situation in the first place? How did we end up with 21 kids in a tavern? How has government at municipal, provincial and national level failed in terms of their own duties and responsibilities, their duty of care to the people of South Africa, that allowed such a situation to develop. And we felt that it was really important to, from the outset, to say there needs to be a national inquiry, full independent inquiry into where the responsibility lies in order to prevent this happening in future.
Just for clarity, but you're not saying the tavern owners should be exonerated?
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah. And in fact, we are very disturbed about the fact that currently the only thing that the tavern owners are being charged with is infringements of the Liquor Act. They are responsible for the death of 21 young people. They need to be held accountable for that too.
Dr. Carter, you've received the complaint. What within your mandate do you think you will be able to do?
Hi, Vuyo, and also hi to everyone at home. I think we were very clear right at the outset that this matter needed to be investigated, and that is why we in fact opened what we call an own accord investigation. When we did receive SAPA's complaint, what we did is we consolidated that complaint into our existing file and communicated that to Mr. Smithers as well. So what that means is that the Human Rights Commission is including all of the elements that have been outlined as elements of concern into its own investigation. And from the outset, we were very clear that there were more than one stakeholder here that we needed to engage with and more than one issue that we needed to address. And your guest in studio is very correct to say it is a bigger issue. It's a systemic issue, and it's a societal issue perhaps as well that we have to look at.
Are you able to say, perhaps without prejudging the matter, that there is prima facie evidence that some of the state players, both law enforcement but also departments that are supposed to take charge of the various aspects of children's or youngsters' lives, this episode has thrown up, that someone may have dropped the ball?
No, absolutely. We were very clear on this right at the outset, and this was also, in fact, echoed by the president at the memorial service of these young people. We engaged with the community, and we are still engaging with the community, who made it very clear that they reported the incidents and continuous issues that they had with this tavern, and they reported that to the local authorities. So we are very clear to say that there needs to be a proper furthering of these concerns, and how we're going to do that, we are still in the process of finalizing, but that may or may not include litigation. So that you will understand the Human Rights Commission has a variety of mandates, which includes protection and promotion. So without pronouncing on the protection mandate, which may or may not include the litigation and the assessment further in this investigation, we must also include the promotion aspect of this issue. When I speak about societal concerns, that's exactly what I'm referring to. What are we doing now that is not excluding the processes in respect of litigation and the criminal or civil issues ongoing? What are we doing now? Are we ensuring that there are, in fact, recreational facilities that the children are going to return to now that the exams are ending as well? Are we ensuring that authorities, the local municipalities, are aware and on high alert that we do not have a repeat of this tragedy now that the end of the year is approaching us very quickly? So our call as the Human Rights Commission, whilst these other processes are being undertaken, is now to the local authorities to say, let us not drop the ball again, and let us make sure that the best interests of the children's rights are being paramount in all considerations, especially now towards the end of the year and the festivities.
Very quickly, Maurice, 30 seconds or under, the key issues that you, as part of among the people who will be appearing before the commission to give evidence, that you'll be raising sharply.
Well, our issue is that there is a failure not just at local government and provincial government level, but actually at national government level. In 2016, Cabinet adopted a new alcohol policy for the country based on the fact that they realized that the 2003 Liquor Act was inadequate. They have still not passed legislation to give effect to that policy. And until such time as we have effective liquor policy in the country, also doing it and taking into account what Dr. Carter is saying, you've got to have a whole of government approach. You can't just pass liquor legislation. You've got to look at the broader society that we're living in and the things that are driving kids and society in general towards using alcohol instead of actually doing other things. Even why people are selling alcohol instead of engaging in other economic activities. These are all part of the fabric of our society. And actually, ultimately, we would like the president to announce that there should be an inquiry of this nature in the same way as they did for Marikana, in the same way as they did for Life Enyobeni. We want the name Enyobeni to have the same resonance, actually, as Marikana and as Life Enyobeni, because we cannot possibly, as a country, turn our back on the fact that 21 young people died for no reason at all.
Well, I look forward to this inquiry. It's an important one indeed. Thanks to both of you for availing yourselves for this conversation this evening. And that's our show for tonight. Do join us again tomorrow evening, same time. Have a good night.